Hello and welcome to the New York Foundation for the Arts. My name is Gabriella Calandro and today I will be giving you an information session on the Barbara and Carl Zydney Grant for Artists with Disabilities. This is a new emergency grant for the New York Foundation for the Arts. The Barbara and Carl Zydney Grant for Artists with Disabilities will open on May 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and close on Tuesday, June 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. In today's presentation, I will be going over the program, eligibility criteria, the application upload requirements, the application form questions, and some frequently asked questions. The eligibility criteria for this grant. All applicants must identify as having a disability. Applicants need to be actively creating in their field of practice, whether it be visual, media, music, performing, or literary arts. And they need to have a sustained commitment to that artistic practice, which means that you need to be actively creating and show documentation of your creations from the last 4 years. So any time from the last 4 years. Applicants must be 21 years or older on or before Tuesday, June 15th, which is the closing date. And applicants need to be current residents of New York City and have maintained residency in the city since July of 2020. Applicants can be past recipients of any of NYFA's previous grants, including NYFA's 2020 and 2021 COVID-19 emergency grants. You can also have an application currently open in a grant that is still being reviewed. That does not disqualify you from applying for this grant. Applicants do not need to be US citizens, but must need to provide a W-9 on selection. I'm now going to go through the required uploads for this application form. There are only 2 required uploads. The rest are optional, which means that you can complete the application form without having to upload more than these 2 documents that I'm about to go through. So the first required document is proof of your New York City residency. As I mentioned, this is open just to New York City artists. So we ask you to upload 1 piece of documentation that lists your full legal name, your NYC residential address, and a 2021 date. So it can be a document from any point in 2021. And documents could include basically anything that's on an official letterhead. So a utility bill, a bank statement, a credit card bill, or a valid ID issued in January 2021 or more recently as well, as long as it was issued in this year, and lists your full name and New York City address. The other required upload for this application is a government issued ID. So this can be any ID, and it could also be an ID that does not list a New York City address as long as it is current. And it should show your full legal name and your date of birth as well. One of the eligibility criteria for this grant is that you need to be 21 years or over, and we require you to upload a government issued ID. I'm now going to go over the documents that are optional to upload. These do not need to be included in your application form, as the questions that they relate to can be answered directly in the application form without including any uploads. But if you wish to include these uploads, you may. The first is an arts CV or resume. And then one of the following which relates to your artistic practice. So you need to be able to show documentation that you have a current sustained commitment to your artistic practice. So this includes a press clipping of a newspaper article or an article that was printed, of you participating in an arts-related event in the last 4 years, or recent work samples. So you can upload images of your work or video or a short manuscript as well. Or a letter of reference. So if you participated in a group show or you were working with an arts, community arts organizer, you may ask them to write you a letter of a reference letter and upload this to your application as documentation of you actively participating in the arts field over the last 4 years. I'm now going to go over the application form. The questions and sections that I'm about to cover can all be found on NYFA's website. We have developed a document that lists all of the guidelines and the questions that you will encounter in the application form, so you can prepare these prior to the application opening. So the first section is general information. So we're going to ask for your name, your address, and how we can get in contact with you. The next two sections relate to your artistic practice and also your residency information and ID. And then the last section is demographic information, which we ask all applicants applying to NYFA's grants to complete. I won't be going over the general information, so section 1 in this presentation, as those are very straightforward questions that you would expect to encounter in all application forms. So I'm going to jump to section 2, which is your artistic practice. Here, we have a series of questions that help us know what type of work that you create. So the first is related to your discipline that best reflects the practice that you have. So this is a list of different options that you can select from, and we ask you to select the one that closely relates to your artistic practice. The second question is in regards to your artistic practice and providing documentation that you have a sustained commitment. So this is where you can upload your CV or resume, or you also have the option of writing an artist biography in the application form itself, up to 300 words. We then move on to examples of your creative practice. So there are 3 options here. You do not need to complete all 3 options, you just need to select one. The first is upload an article or link us to an article online that relates to a story of your artistic practice. So this could be a press release or a review of a show that you were in from the last 4 years. So we're not asking you to upload something from each of the last 4 years, but just something within the last 4-year period. Or you might choose to upload work samples. So this is examples of your practice, including images, video, audio, and also manuscripts you can upload to the application. A maximum of 5 works can be uploaded. And the last option here is a reference letter. As I mentioned before, if you've worked with a curator or a community arts organizer, they can write a letter on your behalf. That letter, if possible, should be on an official letterhead or embedded in an email where we can see the full email address from the recipient and the sender, and also a date if possible. The last option for this section is an optional link to online presence in regards to your artistic practice. So this could be a link to your Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook pages. This is optional and does not need to be completed, but is an option if you would like to include more information about your artistic practice. The application then moves on to residency and identification documentation. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, these are the 2 required uploads to your application. So the first is documentation of your NYC residency from 2021. So this could be a letter on an official letterhead that lists your full name, your New York City address, and the date. And the date needs to be from some time between January of 2021 through until June of 2021. We only need one document, and it can be uploaded as a PDF, a doc, a JPEG, or a PNG file. The second requirement here is for proof of age. So this is an image, a photograph of a government issued ID. This could be a passport, it could be a New York State driver's license or identification card, or a New York City ID card as well. This needs to be a JPG or a PNG upload. We then move on to the final part of the application form, which is the applicant demographics. It's a series of demographic questions in regards to who you are and where you are located. NYFA asks all applicants to the grants programs to complete a demographic questionnaire. All responses remain anonymous and are not part of the review process of your application, and your identity will never be linked to the information. And that will conclude the application form for this particular emergency grant. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, this information and much, much more can be found at NYFA's website. We have also created a document that lists all of the application questions for this grant that you can address prior to actually completing your application form. Assistance in applying. If you require additional assistance in applying for this online application, please do get in touch with us. Either email apply@nyfa.org or phone the number below on Mondays between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We ask that you request your accommodations no later than Tuesday, June 1st. This will allow us adequate time to get in touch with you and to coordinate the best way to help you apply for this grant. Things to keep in mind: you do not need to complete all the optional requirements for the artistic practice section of the application form. You only need to complete one of the options, so please do be aware of that and follow all the instructions. Make sure that your CV or your written bio includes dates and locations. If you have any questions, you can always email us, and grantees are selected via a lottery system. So even if you apply on time and your application is eligible and complete, that does not guarantee that you will be funded through this program. I'm now going to go over some frequently asked questions that might address some issues or concerns that you have today. Many more frequently asked questions can be found on NYFA's website, so do visit www.nyfa.org to read all of the frequently asked questions. And as I mentioned a few times already, you can email us at apply@nyfa.org if you have specific questions related to your application. The first question I will address is: how will this grant affect your social security income for disability insurance or your supplemental security income? If possible, NYFA advises contacting the Social Security Administration for personalised advice. NYFA cannot give you personalised advice on your particular situation or personal finance advice, so we highly recommend that you contact professionals in those fields. Although you should note that NYFA will not be issuing 1099s for this particular grant. So the grant falls under disaster relief in relation to the COVID-19 emergency. So we will not be issuing 1099s for this grant. We do ask you to complete a W-9. This is solely for NYFA's internal purposes and will not translate into a 1099 at the end of the financial year. What do you mean by my current sustained commitment to an artistic practice? So applicants need to be able to demonstrate that they have an ongoing commitment to their practice from any time in the last 4 years. And we ask you to either upload images of your work or link us to an online review of your work or exhibition that you may have been in, or a show, or to ask you to submit a reference letter from someone that you've worked with in the creative industry that has from the last 4 years. Why are qualifying applications being selected by a lottery system? This is a system that allows us to be as fair and equitable across all the applications that we receive. So regardless if you apply at the very start of the application opening or towards the end, you still have equal opportunity to be selected for this particular award. Funds are limited, so this allows us to be equitable and allow everyone to have the same opportunity to be selected. So if your application is eligible and complete, it will be put into the lottery pool and we will be selecting them at random for the amount that we have allotted for this particular grant. So that is the end of my presentation today. Questions, please email apply@nyfa.org and visit NYFA's website, www.nyfa.org, to find out more about this particular grant. Applications open May 4th and close on June 15th. Please do not miss the deadline, as the deadline will not be extended. Good luck, and if you have any questions, please do email us or call.